Hello everybody and welcome to All About Africa. Today I am at the Sankofa Children's Museum of African Cultures. Now this is the first and only children's museum here in the United States that focuses on African history and cultures. We're going to be sitting down with the founder and president, Miss Esther Armstrong, to discuss the founding of this place, its hopes and also its future. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Miss Esther Armstrong, thank you so much for joining me today. I am truly grateful and happy that we're doing this. So I hope that our audience learned so much from our conversation today.
You are very welcome. I am honored to be asked to sit with you and have a conversation.
Absolutely. So now this is a beautiful place, lots of artwork. I know it's not easy to get all these things from Ghana here into the States. Now, when I was walking in, at the very top of the entrance, this is what I saw. You're entering the continent of Africa. This is your door of return. I want to know, why did you put that up there and what's the significance behind that phrase, the door of your return?
I wish I could take credit for that, but I can't because this idea came to us from one of our volunteers.
Oh.
Now, it is based on something that you will observe if you visit one of the so-called castles in Ghana, where slaves were held and prepared for travel to the West. So, and I'm not sure when this plaque was actually posted there, but at the entrance, or rather I should say at the exit, where the slaves leave for the shores, where the boats are waiting, there is a sign up there that says, "Door of no return." How sad.
So a lot of the slaves that left never came back.
They never came back. Not a lot. None of them
Most of
came
them.
back.
Oh,
None
all
of them
of them.
came back. If they either died on the journey or they got to their destinations, whether it was in Europe or the Caribbean or the Americas. So that was a door. When you walked through it, you never came back. As I say, I'm not sure at what point that was put over there, if it was actually there during the slave trade or not. But what we have here is to give hope. Once you cross the threshold from the outside into this building, you are in Africa. You are back home.
The phrase, the door of no return, captures the heartbreaking one-way perilous journey forced upon enslaved Africans across the Atlantic. About 3.1 million women, men, and children were bought or kidnapped, with chains on their feet and shackles around their necks. This door symbolized their final goodbye to their homes, a sad acknowledgement that they would have no means of returning. You can find this door in places like Cape Coast Castle in Ghana, Badagry in Lagos, Nigeria, Ouidah in Benin Republic, and Gorée Island near Dakar, Senegal. These places were the biggest trading spots for slaves along the West African coast from the 15th century to the 19th century.
That's powerful. That just gave me chills. Now, Sankofa's significance, I see this that it's mainly probably the different parts of Africa, but I know that it's and please correct me if I'm wrong with this, it's the term used by the Akan people of Ghana.
Yes.
And it depicts a bird. So I want you to explain to me and help us understand the significance of Sankofa and also how it relates to this museum itself. And obviously, why did you name this place Sankofa?
So Sankofa, and that is a correct spelling, Sankofa. It's from the tree, the Akan, from the Ashanti people, and it's one of many Adinkra symbols, Adinkra. and your audience can go and Google it.
that.
Yes, there are many symbols. The Adinkra, the Sankofa bird being one of them. There are actually 3 variations of Sankofa. One of them looks like a heart. Anyway, Sankofa in the tree means literally go back and fetch what you left behind. Now, it is especially, I think, it is especially true of this environment here, especially among African Americans. If you want to go back to learn lessons learned from the past, you will go back. Prepare yourself, and then you'll be able to move forward. So the bird is looking backwards, but it's going to go move forward after it's learned its lessons from the past.
Gather its knowledge, learn its lesson. Wow.
As Miss Esther shares, the word and symbol, Sankofa, when translated literally, originate from the Akan proverbs, which means it is not a taboo to go back for what you forgot or left behind. This symbol represents a mythical bird with its feet firmly planted forward and its head turned backward. While the Akan people emphasize the significance of learning from the past to forge a stronger future, descendants of enslaved Africans have embraced its meaning as a way to consistently educate themselves about African history and cultures. Like the meaning of the word Sankofa, it is our way of fetching the knowledge hidden from us while our feet boldly walk towards creating a brighter future.
Now, there's no way we can talk about or we have these discussions without talking about slavery. Now, as a Nigerian myself, it's quite embarrassing to say that I didn't learn about slavery or the slave trade until I came to the US. It's very sad, but I didn't. But I want to know for you, given the knowledge that you have, when did you hear about, or when was your first encounter with the slave trade or the slavery or the history of slavery?
So, in high school.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow, okay.
In high school, I took history, but it was modern history.
High school in Ghana.
High school in Ghana.
Okay.
It was modern history, and it was mainly European history. When I went to college, history was my minor. And again, it was history mostly of Europe. My major was English literature. And from there, you could learn about cultures in Nigeria, for instance, when you read Chinua Achebe, Things Fall Apart, or any of his other books. People are surprised when I tell them today that our curriculum, at least in Ghana, until fairly recently, and I can't even swear to it, was mainly based on the British system.
Sure.
When they left in 1957, which is when Ghana got its independence, we let things be. We did not wake up and say, oh, now we can do our own thing. Let's, develop our own curriculum, which will allow us to teach our young ones about the continent of Africa. No, we did not do that. So I'm not surprised that you didn't know. What little I knew about the slave trade was through a history lesson, and this was in college. It wasn't even, they didn't dig deep into it. I can't say that here. There was a story when I was in college and I was working as a tour guide where I started singing, and some of the tourists were from America. They were students. And I started singing a slave song. I had no idea how offensive it was because it did not mean anything to me. It was a song. It did not mean anything to me until one of the guests said, that's a slave song. Did you know that? I said, no. And she said, yeah, listen to the words that you're singing. And it was disconcerting to me when she then went on to explain to me what the words meant. Unfortunately for us, you know, in Africa today, things have been changing some, but we are not proud enough of our identity. We are not proud enough of our history to make it part of the school curriculum so that children grow up knowing the history. Because otherwise, you know they speak French in Togo. You have no idea why they speak French in Togo.
Very true. Very true.
Or in the Ivory Coast.
Portuguese, I mean, all these languages, yeah, in
Yes,
different parts of Africa. Absolutely.
Exactly. So we have been very slow to wake up and recognize that there is a story why this big building is sitting on the shores of our land. Ask questions and be told why this is not actually a castle, as people generally call it, but it's a fort. It's a fortress where human beings were held and what's the word I want? They were mishandled and eventually were sold off or carted off as slaves to be sold in foreign lands. They don't teach us this in school. Maybe today they are. But when I tell my customers that, they're shocked.
Yeah. Because I think that's what deepens the disparity, to be honest, between Africans and African Americans. If I know that some of my cousins were shipped off to the US, as soon as I get here, it would click like, oh, these are, I'm just saying cousins, just to be very inclusive.
Well, we're like family.
Yeah, like family. So it's like when you come here, you're like, okay, they look like me, but they don't sound like me. Like, what's going on? I remember that just, it disturbed my brain memory for a while. I was going to add to what you're saying. When you share that we're not proud of our identity, a lot of the art that I see in here, like that or that, I saw it when I went to the village to see my grandfather prior to his passing, right? That's the only place I've seen it. As Africans, we're told that these things are taboos. So a lot of us flee away from it, many of us, and that's what comes with us not being proud of our culture. So I want to know, how did you decide on embracing this? Like, you must, I want to say you're not a Christian, but you must, how did you decide on changing your perspective on this? Because I know that if you, as Africans, a lot of that religious aspect plays a big role. You have to get to a certain level in life and say, you know what, that doesn't make sense anymore. So I'm gonna go out there and search for the information myself. So how did you how did you begin to embrace these things and see it not as a taboo and see it more as a culture?
It's embarrassing to say, but it took a white man to open that door for me. And that is my husband. When I met him, I already had a shop. It was mainly, we mainly offered African clothing and art and jewelry, things like that. So he asked me at one time, I think he had just retired from his job. And I invited him to help me run the store. So he said, so why don't you carry African art? I said, because I don't know anything about it. He says, why don't you know anything about it? This is beautiful art from Africa. And I said, all I know is it was not art when I encountered it in Ghana growing up. It was idols. And the missionaries who came from Europe told our people that this was idol worship and it was wrong. Of course, they were bringing Christianity. So in order for that to succeed, they had to replace what the traditional Africans had. So they said this was all wrong. We make a joke about that now, that when they said, close your eyes, let's pray, by the time you opened your eyes,
the property is gone.
everything was gone. Right, but you know, I believe that the understanding then was that, okay, this is evil. You are not going to go to heaven if you keep this around you. So, good riddance. Of course, not everybody adhered to that because there are still shamans who get visited by people, traditional Africans, to ask, to get answers to life's questions, because people need answers. So that's how that worked. Anyway, my husband said, okay, so you don't know anything about it. How about if I study it? If I study it, can we then carry it? I said, sure, of course. I had no idea that he was going to study it with a passion. To the extent that today, when people want to know about the art that they own, they want to call him. They want to email him. They want to come over here and bring their piece so he can tell them about it. And it's taking us, I think this was 2005, it's taking us this long to collect the art that we have in the gallery as well as in the museum. So I still don't know a whole lot about it because that is Jim's department. I let him. And I think it was easier for him to do it because he did not carry that baggage with him. He came with a blank, mind, and he was reading and reading and reading, and he learned a whole lot. Where I tell you, Africans come to the store, which is on the other end of the building, and the gallery. They poke their head in and step back. And I'm saying nothing in there bites. You feel free to go in, but it's in the back of their minds that this is wrong. And there are a few American Christians who will not go in the gallery either because of their own belief that this is idol worship. And I try to assure them that nobody's worshiping any of these pieces. Nobody. Today they are being called art and they are used to decorate. So nothing to be afraid of here.
That's quite interesting you say that. When I went to Rome and I went to the Vatican, the church, they had a lot of idols. They had a lot of these things in the church and people buried in the church, and so it's when you start to travel, you start to learn so much about what the European did to Africa and there's no way on earth you can't get angry because they came and robbed. You know, and today we're talking about this in the museum in England. You would find these things that they stole from the Benin Kingdoms and other parts of Africa, and people are paying thousands of dollars to go in and look at these things. You know what I mean?
As a young girl, I don't recall seeing any of these artworks at our family home in Lagos, Nigeria. Like many Africans, including myself, I was taught from an early age that these artworks were considered demonic, leading many of us to distance ourselves from learning about such cultural treasures. Now, the European looted more than 500,000 artifacts from the continent, and they are scattered across the world. But today, a growing number of Africans are awakening to the significance of these items and are demanding their return.
So it's about time we wake up, you know?
I
yeah.
think some African countries are waking up and asking for
their
their
stuff
artifacts back because the Europeans never paid for them. They never got permission to take them.
Sure.
They just took them. And now they are either in private collections or they are in museums. And as you say, people pay money to go see to go see them. So it's deep.
It is. And with this museum, why did you focus on children? I know it says a Sankofa Children's Museum.
Children's Museum. Yes. Over the years when I was running the store, I realized that there was a dearth of information about Africa in the community. People asked questions that made me realize that, okay, we can teach individuals about various things, but what if we could do it on a group level? Anyway, I got the opportunity through a young friend of mine who suggested that we have something for Black History Month for some school children. And I said, okay, let's do that. At that time, we only had the shop and we were located on Charles Street. So we rented a studio across the street from where the store was, and we dedicated 3 days to showcase Africa. For one thing, I realized that even some adults did not know that Africa was a continent with a lot of countries. So that was one of our main goals, to teach the children with maps and other different cultures that Africa actually is a continent, not a country, and it has all these many countries. Anyway, during that 3-day period, it was just so heartwarming to see how these children embraced the cultures. You know, they could dress in African clothes and tie their hair. The young, you know, the boys wore kufis. They did their drumming and, you know, played other musical instruments. The teachers read Anansi stories to them. It was wonderful. And one of the parents said to me on her way out the door, she said, "Miss Esther, you are not going to do this just for Black History Month. That's 1 month in a year. The children need to know about this, and the children need to participate in this every day of the year." I said, okay, let me think about it. I thought about it, and of course, my husband is very supportive of it, having been a former school teacher. When you meet him, you think he's still a school teacher because he'll go right into it and talk your ears off. But that is what gave me the idea that, okay, if we are going to teach children, we can't be another school. We can't be another classroom. We have to find another medium through which they can learn. And of course, there are studies which prove that people learn by doing.
True.
So interactive. So it's not a looking museum where you walk around and look at art. But if it is something that you can touch, then you should touch it and get the experience there. We did not go the way of the adults, because the adults, if they are interested,
Do you know how to get
can
that
go
information?
online. They can Google any subject and find information, but not the children. We want to build in the children that self-awareness, that identity, that gives them pride. Hopefully, by the time they are in their teens, because we were trying to focus on third, fourth, and fifth graders before COVID came and messed up everything for us. That's still our focus, though. And we're hoping that by the time they're in high school or college, they might remember a museum in Baltimore that they visited, where they did different things, played the drum, wore their first African dashiki or hat, put together a map of Africa, found out that Africa had 54 countries,
Yep.
and learned the names of one or two of those countries. So we think children are very ripe for information, and we want to sow the seed early.
While they're young, right?
Yes.
The sculptures you find in the African Children's Museum come from various countries across West Africa. Back then, the pieces held spiritual and cultural significance, but over time, the significance has faded. However, part of the museum's goal is to restore that element. The museum provides history classes, games centered on geographical locations across the continent, and children are taught African dances. Miss Esther shares that the journey has not always been easy, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic.
I have
Yes.
2 more questions for you. The next one is, what's your biggest challenge so far, having this space?
Having this space, the biggest challenge was COVID. And with that came no business and no money. So money has been a big challenge, and for that reason, we are unable to hire, recruit museum people who will make my life a little bit easier. It's not happening yet. We are working hard to engage the schools so that our whole business plan was based on, okay, so we have perhaps 75 school children come through here every day for 5 days. And on weekends, we get parents and their children and all of that. We got it all planned, how that was going to work out. And then we opened our doors on February 1st, 2020.
Wow.
COVID was on its way. We
Right.
just didn't know
It's
it.
already there. Yeah.
It was, right. So within 5 weeks, we
Ooh.
closed.
Yeah, it's tough.
And closed for almost 2 years. No revenue. The other unfortunate part was that even though there was a lot of money out there to help businesses, we did not qualify for much at all. Why didn't we qualify for much? Most of these grants were based on previous earnings. So how many employees did you have in 2019?
Oh.
What was your revenue stream in 2019? We didn't have any of that. So we did not qualify for much at all. It's still difficult. But we have come so far, and I have faith. Well, a lot of people remind me that I should have faith instead of trying to give up. But I just turned 70, and to tell you the truth, I am tired. I am tired. The grind really wears you down,
Yeah, it does.
you know?
It does.
So I need some young people to,
To come
I'll
in and
happily hand over to you as long as you know what you're
you're
doing.
doing. Correct. Wow. So now that means the hope for the museum is that it flourishes. That
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, we want it to succeed because we are doing important work.
Indeed, indeed.
We are doing important work. I have a friend, an American friend, who's moved to Ghana with his wife, and he keeps reminding me. Well, he helped me start the planning, and then he left. And now, having lived there, he tells me every chance he gets, he calls me Queen. Queen, they need you in Ghana. What you're doing in America is so good that we need you to come and duplicate it in Ghana.
Wow.
Because they don't have
They
it.
don't have this, yeah.
They don't
It's
have
very
it.
sad.
Yes, it is. So anyway, I got a job there.
So you
like I said, I'll happily hand over to some passionate, competent people to take it to the next level.
Sure. So one last question, and I'm ending this because we can go on for hours. We talked about identity. We talked about self-esteem. We talked about Africa and the brainwashing. We talked a tiny bit about religion. I want to know for you, do you think we would ever return back to the place of we as African understanding ourselves and accepting who we are as a society, as a people? And I'm just curious to know what your viewpoint would be on that.
I wish I could say yes, because I do see change. However, change is slow because the brainwashing that has gone on has been going on for so long, and it's so deep that our people are not even aware when they are being exploited. There is some change. I do see some changes. The younger people in Ghana, for instance, do ask questions. And so there is hope, but it's not likely to happen in my lifetime, where we actually awake and know all the facts and know where we've been and where we want to go. I think right now most young African people, because of bad governance in a lot of these countries, they are more focused on how to make it, survival. Because, people finish college and they can't find a job.
Very true.
And the other thing about finishing college is the subjects that people are concentrating on are not ones that will actually allow you to be creative, be able to make jobs. Everybody depends on the government for all of these things. I don't know how long that can go on, but the same government needs to focus on changing the curriculum to meet today's challenges, not the liberal arts that I took when I was in college, but actually offer youth Until the next time.
Until next time. So
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you and to your followers.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.